Welcome to this deep dive into theory of constraints. Today, our source material is the 1925 classic written by Florence Scovel Shinn called The Game of Life and How to Play It.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because when you hear 1925 classic, you probably brace yourself for this dusty abstract philosophy. But this book is so intensely practical.
Oh, totally. It reads almost like a mechanical blueprint. And I know you listening right now might be wondering, wait, how does a spiritual self-help book from a century ago connect to the theory of constraints?
Right, which is usually applied to manufacturing or business bottlenecks.
Exactly. But if you really look at human life as a system, right, we all have goals. We define success as improving our health, our wealth, our happiness, and love. Shin actually calls this the square of life.
Which is a perfect metaphor.
Mhm.
And in any system, according to Tosi, there are at most a few constraints limiting you from hitting those goals.
Yes. And for us as humans, those constraints are usually energy, attention, trust, and connection. Our connection with ourselves and with others.
I mean, that's exactly what Shin is diagnosing. She argues that life isn't this grueling battle we've all been conditioned to believe it is.
The whole, daily grind mentality.
Right. She says life is actually a game of giving and receiving. And if you don't know the incredibly precise rules of this game, you're basically spending your whole life accidentally playing against yourself.
Which brings us to the playing field. To play any game, you have to know where it's happening. And Shin says, the field isn't the physical world.
No, not at all. The playing field is entirely within the human mind. And she divides it into three departments.
The conscious, the subconscious, and the superconscious.
Exactly. And understanding the friction between these three is, well, it's the whole secret to focusing your attention, which is one of those main constraints you mentioned earlier.
So let's break that down, because the conscious mind is the one we use every day, right? The reasoning mind.
Yeah. Shin calls it the mortal or carnal mind. It looks at the physical evidence around you. It checks the bank account. It watches the news, and it sees limitations.
It's basically an anxiety machine.
Totally. It is constantly calculating risk and operating from a place of scarcity.
Right.
But then you have the subconscious mind, and this is a totally different beast.
Yeah, I kept visualizing the subconscious as this incredibly powerful, state-of-the-art industrial 3D printer.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Right, because it has zero capacity for direction. It just blindly prints whatever design the conscious mind uploads into the queue.
It never pauses to ask, hey, are you absolutely sure you want me to print this massive financial disaster?
Right. Are you sure you want to print a tragedy today?
It just mechanically executes the file, which is why Shin calls the imagination the scissors of the mind.
Mm.
It is constantly, cutting out the pictures we visualize.
There's that super haunting anecdote in the book about the little girl who played widow.
Oh, yeah. That is the perfect, albeit dark, illustration of the 3D printer running without supervision.
Explain that one, because it really stuck with me.
So there's this little girl, and just for fun, she would play dress up, but she would put on these black clothes and a long sweeping mourning veil.
Like she was grieving a dead husband.
Exactly. She acted all out, and the adults around her thought it was, highly amusing. But she was impressing that vivid image so deeply onto her subconscious mind.
And subconscious doesn't know the difference between a game and reality.
Right. It has no sense of humor. So decades later, she grows up, she marries a man she deeply loves, and shortly after, he actually dies.
Wow.
Yeah. She ends up wearing that black veil for real for many years. The subconscious just carried out the picture it was fed, totally indifferent to the tragedy.
See, that story is wild, especially because modern neuroscience actually backs this up. Your brain fires the same neural pathways, whether you're physically doing something or just vividly imagining it.
Exactly. Which is why Shin insists on extreme mental discipline. It's not about toxic positivity. It's about recognizing that every single complaint or sarcastic joke is literally bad programming.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about my own life, right? How many times do I say, oh, typical Monday, everything's on fire?
You're actively uploading a virus into the system when you do that.
So how do we stop? Because our conscious mind is so constrained by that scarcity perspective.
Well, this is where the superconscious mind comes in. That's the third department. Shin describes it as the divine spark within. It holds the perfect ideas, what she calls the divine design of your life.
So the goal is to basically bypass the anxious conscious mind and link the subconscious directly to the superconscious.
Exactly. You have to actively train your imagination to only image good. Which brings us to how we actually make our moves on the board.
Right, which leads to this wild concept of digging your ditches. This is where we start talking about trust, right? Overcoming the trust constraint.
Yes. Because words are a vibratory force, but you have to back them up with action. You have to prepare for the thing you ask for, even when there's zero physical evidence it's coming.
You're building active faith, like the woman looking for the apartment in New York.
Oh, the blanket story.
Yes. So, set this up. There's a severe housing shortage. No vacancies anywhere.
And her friends are all pitying her, telling her she's going to end up living in a hotel. Her reasoning mind is probably screaming at her to panic.
But instead, she goes out and buys brand new blankets for the bed in the apartment she doesn't even have yet.
Right. Her logical mind was definitely telling her she was wasting money.
Mm-hmm.
But she manually overrode that logic. She acted as though the outcome was already guaranteed.
And she got an apartment, right, over like 200 other applicants.
She did. Because the blankets weren't just, fabric. They were a psychological tool to break her own subconscious belief in scarcity.
I have to push back here, though. Putting myself in the shoes of anyone listening, buying blankets for a non-existent apartment, or like that other story where the woman spends her literal last $8 on a train ticket just on a hunch.
Yeah, every financial advisor would call that completely reckless.
Exactly. It borders on toxic delusion. Like, how is this not just irresponsible behavior?
Well, the distinction is the underlying motivation. It's expectancy versus impulsive consumption.
Okay, unpack that.
Shinn isn't telling people to max out their credit cards to pretend they're rich. She's advocating for the mechanical application of expectancy. You have to prove to your own mind that you expect a positive outcome.
Oh, I see. So if you pray for rain, but you refuse to carry an umbrella,
Your subconscious knows you don't actually believe it's going to rain.
that makes so much sense. It's about aligning your actions to build that ultimate trust.
Right. Doubt and fear are just inverted faith. It's having faith in evil or faith in scarcity.
Yeah.
You have to flip it.
Okay, so you're managing your words, you're digging your ditches, but what happens when the game throws a massive, undeniable obstacle at you? Like a terrible boss or a health crisis.
This is where we hit the constraint of energy. And Shinn's strategy here is totally counterintuitive. She calls it the law of non-resistance.
Do not fight the problem.
Never fight it. Because resistance places your body and mind in a literal state of torment. Think about what happens when you fight something.
You tense up.
Exactly. Cortisol floods your system, your vision narrows. You lose all your creative problem-solving energy. Shinn uses the philosophy of water.
That water is the most powerful element because it's perfectly non-resistant.
Yes. It doesn't fight the rock in the middle of the river. It just flows right around it, and eventually it wears a rock away.
There's that amazing story in the book about the woman in the eclipse of the telephone.
Oh, that's such a great example of wasted energy.
She's waiting for this desperately important phone call, right? And she's just vibrating with anxiety, sitting by the phone, completely tense.
She was trying to force the outcome through sheer willpower. And by doing so, she literally blocked it. The line disconnected.
Because her tension was a form of resistance.
Exactly. It wasn't until she recognized her resistance, let go of all that physical and mental tension, and just blessed the situation that the phone magically reconnected and the call came through.
It's so much like Aikido, the martial art, where you don't block a punch with brute force. You just blend with the momentum and redirect it.
If you meet force with force, you just break your own arm.
Right. Shinn literally says, if you face a situation fearlessly, there's no situation to face. It falls away of its own weight.
Because an external problem is almost always a projection of an internal inharmony. When you stop feeding the fire with your emotional reaction, you cut off its fuel supply. The fire just burns out.
Which brings us to the penalty system of the game. Because if our internal reactions dictate reality, our negative actions have to have consequences.
They absolutely do. Shinn calls this karma. It's the mechanical law of cause and effect.
The boomerang.
Exactly. Whatever you send out in thought or deed invariably returns. If you criticize, you'll be criticized.
Like the woman who thought it was hilarious to send her friend fake stage money as a joke.
Yes. And what happens next?
She goes to the bank, cashes a check, and the teller literally hands her a counterfeit $20 bill.
Because the subconscious 3D printer doesn't understand context. It doesn't get practical jokes. It just saw her actively circulating fake money. So it printed a scenario that brought fake money right back to her.
That is so sobering. But this ties into the constraint of connection, doesn't it? Because karma is harsh, but Shinn introduces a cheat code.
The ultimate cheat code. The law of grace or forgiveness.
And this is how we clear the connection constraint. Because unforgiveness literally severs our connection to others and to our own well-being. The poisoned oyster story is wild.
Oh, I love the poisoned oyster.
A woman comes to Shinn and says she's violently ill from eating a bad oyster.
And Shinn basically looks at her and says, no, the oyster was perfectly harmless. You poisoned the oyster.
She poisoned her own food because she was mad at, 19 different people?
19 people. She was furiously resentful. And if we look at psychosomatic medicine today, this tracks perfectly.
Yeah, if you hold on to that much resentment, your body is stuck in fight or flight.
Digestion stops, inflammation spikes. Shinn argues that unforgiveness literally creates disease. The resentment altered her physical chemistry so much that a totally normal oyster made her sick.
So how do you practically use forgiveness? Because when you've been genuinely wronged, wiping the slate clean feels impossible.
Well, Shinn frames forgiveness as a mechanical necessity for your own survival.
Yeah.
It's not about taking the moral high ground.
It's radical self-correction.
Yes. By blessing the person you consider an enemy, you rob them of their ammunition. You are clearing the cache of your own subconscious mind.
Because as long as you hold the resentment, you're chained to them. And your printer just keeps printing that toxic dynamic.
Forgiveness severs the chain. It frees up all that blocked connection and energy.
But okay, clearing that cache is incredibly hard when you're actively panicking. When the rent is due tomorrow, you can't just, positive think your way out of it.
Which brings us to Shinn's ultimate winning strategy. And this is how we overcome the final constraint, the constraint of attention.
Casting the burden and relying on intuition.
Exactly. Because the reasoning mind is just too limited to solve complex life problems. It loops in fear. It looks at the bills and panics.
So you have to mechanically cast the burden onto the superconscious mind.
You have to admit your logical mind is out of its depth.
It feels exactly like delegating at work. Like you have an impossible task, so instead of agonizing over it, you hand the file to a much smarter executive assistant.
You're superconscious.
Right.
Yeah.
You drop the weight of it and you just wait for them to email you the next step.
And that next step arrives as intuition. Now, this is crucial. Shinn defines intuition very specifically. She spells it as intuition.
Inner teaching.
Exactly. Being taught from within. It's a spiritual faculty. It doesn't explain itself. It doesn't give you a 10-point business plan. It merely points the way.
And sometimes it points in a direction that makes absolutely zero logical sense.
Like buying a pink enamel paper cutter?
Yes. The woman who desperately needed a huge sum of money. She casts the burden, she drops the panic, and suddenly feels this random pull to go buy office supplies.
And her logical mind is screaming, "You are in debt. Do not buy a paper cutter."
But she buys it anyway. And the second she holds it, she gets this flash of visualization. She pictures herself using it to open an envelope with a massive check.
It became her physical bridge of active faith. And shortly after, the exact money she needed arrived.
Or the woman who couldn't decide between a job in New York or Palm Beach. She casts the burden, goes to sleep, and wakes up literally smelling the fragrance of Palm Beach in her New York bedroom.
She follows the scent.
Yeah.
She takes the job in Florida, and it's a massive success. You have to trust that inner knowing, that intuition, above the external appearances of scarcity.
It's all about being awake at the controls, isn't it?
It really is.
I mean, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored how to overcome our human constraints, energy, attention, trust, connection, to hit that square of life.
Health, wealth, love, and perfect self-expression.
Exactly. We do it by managing the 3D printer of our subconscious.
Right.
We use the power of our words to dig our ditches.
We practice non-resistance to save our energy.
Right. And we listen to that literal inner teaching, our intuition to guide our moves.
It's a sobering reminder for you listening. Every single day, through casual complaints or passing jokes, you're either preparing the ground for your success or you're actively programming hurdles into the machine.
The controller is firmly in your hands. Which brings us to our final thought for this deep dive. Shinn makes this incredibly provocative assertion in the text.
Oh, I know the one.
She says, "No man is your enemy, no man is your friend, every man is your teacher."
It changes everything.
It really does. So we want to leave you with this to mull over. If you look at the most frustrating person or the biggest, most immovable obstacle in your life right now, what exact lesson is the game using them to teach you about yourself? Remember, the printer is always running. What are you going to upload next?